The lecture hall was a sterile cavern of recycled air and academic monotony. Rows of alien students sprawled across their seats, their diverse forms a testament to the galaxy's vast biodiversity. The Zephyrs, with their sinuous tentacles, draped lazily over armrests, the crystalline Valkyrie refracted the overhead lights into faint rainbows, their glow dimmed in boredom. The karate, fur-covered and six-armed, tapped their claws impatiently on desks, their restless energy palpable. It was Tuesday, and for the students of Combat Assessment 101 at the Galactic Academy, that meant another tedious hour analyzing some insignificant species from a backwater planet. At the front of the room, Professor Drixmoth, a four-eyed scholar from the Drenvar species, stood with an air of detached authority. His manipulator appendages flicked across a holographic display, pulling up charts of military statistics and species classifications. His voice, a flat monotone honed by decades of lecturing, cut through the room. Today, we examine a new addition to our galactic catalog, Homo sapiens, commonly known as humans. A collective groan rippled through the class. The Zephyrs in the front row slouched further, their tentacles curling into sleep cycle positions. A Valkyrie dimmed their luminescence to a barely perceptible flicker, signaling disinterest. Humans, the species that had only recently stumbled into faster-than-light travel. They sounded about as threatening as a wilted fern. The karate student, always eager for a challenge, rolled all six of his eyes. This was going to be a waste of time. Drixmoth clicked to the first slide. A holographic figure of a human rotated slowly in the air, a bipedal creature with pale pink skin stretched over a calcium-based skeleton. Average height, 1.7 meters. Average weight, 70 kilograms. No natural armor, no venom sacs, no energy. Projection capabilities, he recited, his voice devoid of enthusiasm. A Valkyrie raised a translucent appendage, their voice tinged with skepticism. Professor, why are we studying these humans? They don't seem to have any combat-relevant adaptations. Standard protocol, Drixmoth replied, advancing the slide. Every species achieving faster-than-light capability is subject to military assessment. The hologram shifted to show human settlements, orderly cities of rectangular structures, vehicles moving along predictable paths, and individuals engaged in mundane routines. It was aggressively unremarkable, a civilization that screamed peacefully to the point of boredom. Their primary weapons are projectile-based, Drixmoth continued, highlighting images of firearms and explosives, chemical propulsion systems, crude, but effective against unarmored targets. Their military follows a hierarchical structure, typical of carbon-based species. The karate student leaned forward, his six arms flexing with curiosity. What's their win-loss ratio in interplanetary conflicts? 0 conflicts recorded, Drixmoth said, his tone as dry as the recycled air. Humans have never engaged another spacefaring species in combat. They are classified as a peaceful expansion species, focused on trade, exploration, and diplomacy. The room's energy plummeted further. Peaceful species were the academic equivalent of watching algae grow. No exotic combat adaptations, no bloodthirsty military traditions, no spark for a lively debate. The students resigned themselves to an hour of stifling boredom. Drixmoth clicked to a new slide, his four eyes scanning the room. However, there is one development worth noting. Earth has recently established its first interplanetary exchange program, sending students to galactic institutions to foster mutual understanding and cultural exchange. The karate's mandibles clicked in amusement. They're sending their younglings to study abroad. That's adorable, indeed, Drixmoth said, checking his schedule display. In fact, we have one such exchange student enrolled in this course. She should arrive momentarily. For the first time that semester, a flicker of genuine interest sparked in the room. Actual human contact was rare. Most species knew humans only through trade deals or diplomatic broadcasts. The chance to observe one in person, especially in an academic setting, was a unique opportunity for field study. The students exchanged glances, their boredom giving way to curiosity. The door chimed softly, and every head turned. The human who entered was both exactly as expected and utterly surprising. She matched the holographic projection. Average height, average build, clad in unremarkable civilian clothing, a dark jacket, simple pants, and soft-soled shoes that made no sound as she moved. Her brown hair was tied back in a practical ponytail, her features plain enough to blend into any crowd. Yet, the moment she stepped through the doorway, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't anything overt. She carried no weapons, made no threatening gestures, and her expression was neutral, almost bored. But there was something in the way she moved, a fluid economy of motion, a quiet confidence that suggested familiarity with danger. She walked to an empty seat near the back, set down a basic shoulder bag, and settled into her chair with the grace that felt predatory. Drixmoth's eyes tracked her progress, his usually steady voice catching slightly. "Class, I'd like you to welcome our exchange student from Earth. This is Rebecca Cole." Rebecca gave a curt nod, not bothering to stand or smile. "Rebecca," she said simply, her voice calm and clear, with an accent unlike the polished diplomatic recordings they'd studied. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with an unspoken tension. Every alien student stared, but not with the casual curiosity they'd expected. Something primal stirred in their instincts, a warning from their threat assessment centers that they couldn't quite place. The Karate's 6 arms shifted into a subtle defensive posture. The Valkyries' luminescence flared briefly, betraying their unease. Rebecca, oblivious or indifferent to the effect, pulled out a notebook and pen, actual paper and ink. A primitive relic hand, looked expectantly at Drixmoth. The professor cleared his throat, his voice still unsteady. "Right. As I was saying, we're covering human combat capabilities today." Fortunate timing. Rebecca's pen paused for a fraction of a second. She glanced up with mild interest. "Combat capabilities. Standard threat assessment," Drixmoth explained, clicking back to his slides. "We analyzed the military potential of all spacefaring species. Nothing personal, purely academic." Rebecca returned to her notebook, seemingly unbothered that her species was being dissected for its capacity to kill. But the room's dynamic had changed. Every mention of human military tactics, combined arms, infantry supported by vehicles, and air support prompted furtive glances at Rebecca. She took notes like any student, nodding occasionally, but shook her head at certain points, her subtle disagreement drawing attention. The tension escalated when Drixmoth described human tactics as typical combined arms engagements. Rebecca's pen stopped. She looked up, frowning slightly. "Typically?" she said, her voice carrying just enough emphasis to suggest correction. "That's not really accurate." The room went silent. This wasn't how lectures worked. The subject species didn't interrupt with real-time corrections. Drixmoth's eyes narrowed. "Could you elaborate?" Rebecca shrugged, her tone conversational but firm. "Humans adapt. If conventional tactics work, we use them. If not, we try something else. That doctrine you're showing, it's more like guidelines." Every alien in the room leaned forward, their attention now razor-sharp. The karate student's mandibles clicked nervously. "What kind of something else?" Rebecca tapped her pen against her notebook, considering. "Depends. Urban warfare differs from open field battles. Counterinsurgency ain't like force on force. Naval combat, aerial, space-based, underwater, underground, it varies." Drixmoth stared, his fascination tinged with unease. "You seem quite knowledgeable about human military tactics." "I should be," Rebecca said matter-of-factly, her words sending a chill through the room. The casual certainty in her voice was more unsettling than any threat. Drixmoth pressed on, displaying charts of casualty ratios and equipment effectiveness. Human forces maintain a combat effectiveness rating of 3.7 on the Galactic scale, lower middle tier. Rebecca's pen stopped again. She studied the hologram. Then Drixmoth, a small smile playing on her lips. "Where did you get those numbers?" Standard intelligence protocols, Drixmoth replied. Diplomatic observations, trade negotiations, cultural exchanges. Ah, Rebecca nodded, her smile widening. So, you're basing this on what humans told diplomats and trade reps? Yes, that's standard procedure. Her smile grew unsettling. Professor, if another species wanted to assess your military capabilities, would you send your deadliest soldiers to meet their diplomats? The question hung like a live grenade. Students exchanged glances, their unease mounting. Drixmoth stammered, that is to say, humans would send accountants and librarians. Rebecca continued, her tone still educational. People who think military strategy is about efficient supply chains and timely paperwork, those stats, they're probably accurate for cargo ship security or planetary militias, the ones who wave at alien visitors and ensure there's enough coffee at trade talks. The karate's 6 arms extended fully, his species' maximum threat posture. Are you saying the data is falsified? Not falsified, Rebecca said. Incomplete. Humans have a saying, never show all your cards. We keep our real military capabilities separate from diplomatic ones. Drixmoth gripped his podium, his 4 eyes fixed on Rebecca. What are you suggesting? She tapped her pen thoughtfully. That casualty ratio 12 to 15% losses in engagements. Accurate for police actions or peacekeeping. But when humans actually go to war. She paused, scanning the nervous alien faces. The math gets more one-sided. In whose favor? Whispered Avelkari, their crystalline form flickering. Rebecca looked surprised. Humans obviously propose changes. Winning is the point of war, isn't it? Her casual certainty was terrifying. The atmosphere grew electric when Talvix, a brash hegemony cadet, stood, his scales rippling with disdain. This is ridiculous. We're here to learn combat assessment, not listen to human propaganda. She's using psychological warfare, classic intimidation tactics. Students nodded, relieved to categorize Rebecca's words as exaggeration. Talvix gestured at her. Look at her. No weapons. No combat scarring. She's probably never seen real fighting. Drixmoth felt a chill. In his 30 years of teaching, he'd learned to recognize dangerous beings the way they moved, the quiet focus in their eyes. Rebecca had those markers, and Talvix was about to learn why. Why don't we test her claims? Talvix challenged. If humans are such incredible fighters, let's see a demonstration. The room's temperature seemed to drop. Rebecca tilted her head. A demonstration of what? Basic combat techniques, Talvix said, his scales now aggressive, hand to hand. Unless you're not qualified to represent your species. Drixmoth started to intervene, but Rebecca stood. Sure, sounds educational. The center of the lecture hall was cleared in minutes, desks pushed back to form an impromptu arena. Talvix, larger and faster, limbered up with hegemony combat forms, his claws and tail ready. Rebecca stepped into the circle, still in her plain clothes, no weapons or protective gear. She didn't stretch or assume a stance. Standard rules. She asked casually, first to yield or submit. Talvix nodded, his scales flaring. No permanent damage. No lethal techniques. Sounds good, Rebecca said, then added, though I should mention, I don't know any non-lethal techniques. The room froze. What? Drixmoth's voice rose. I've never trained in sport fighting, Rebecca said, shrugging. Everything I know is designed to kill efficiently. Talvix's scales faltered. You're bluffing. Probably, Rebecca agreed. Let's find out. Talvix lunged, his attack a textbook hegemony maneuver, claws and tail striking from multiple angles. It was unblockable, designed to overwhelm. But Rebecca sidestepped, moving with impossible precision. Before anyone could blink, she was behind Talvix, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder blade. He froze, eyes wide with shock. Efficiency doesn't look impressive, Rebecca said conversationally, pressing her thumb slightly. Talvix gasped in pain. People expect combat to be dramatic, big moves, obvious techniques. But efficient fighting is about the shortest path to stopping your opponent. Everything else is decoration. I yield, Talvix whispered, humiliated. Rebecca released him and stepped back. Good match. Thanks for volunteering. The silence was deafening. The students scribbled frantically, trying to analyze what had happened, but there was nothing to analyze. Rebecca had moved, Talvix had stopped, and the demonstration was over. Drixmoth stared at Rebecca, a horrifying realization dawning. Her movements, her familiarity with combat, her quiet confidence had all pointed to something he'd overlooked. "Miss Cole," he said, his voice tight, "have we met before?" Rebecca helped Talvix to his feet, then met Drixmoth's gaze. "I don't think so. I'd remember." But Drixmoth's species had perfect facial recall, and details were aligning with nightmare clarity. "What's your last name again?" "Cole. And your first assignment here?" She hesitated, the first sign of discomfort. "I'm auditing classes, academic exchange." "Nothing official." "Before that," Drixmoth pressed, "what was your previous assignment?" The room's silence grew heavier. Rebecca sighed, closing her notebook. "That's probably not relevant to today's lesson." But Drixmoth remembered now not her face, but her name. Rebecca Cole, the human who'd ended the hegemony's expansion in the crash sector 3 years ago. The one they called the Closer, because conflicts ended when she arrived. Whispers of her exploits haunted officer clubs and strategic briefings, a single human who turned a minor dispute into a galactic cautionary tale. "Oh no," Drixmoth whispered. Rebecca offered an apologetic smile. "I was hoping we could stick to academics." Drixmoth's voice trembled as he spoke. "The hegemony incident. The crash sector, 3 years ago." Rebecca's shoulders tensed, her eyes sharpening. "You have me confused with someone else." "No," Drixmoth said, stepping closer. "I was in the intelligence division, monitoring that skirmish. It escalated into something else. Entire hegemony battle groups withdrew. Commanders requested reassignments. Rumors spread of a single human who didn't fight like the others, who treated warfare like a puzzle to solve." A Velkari spoke, their form flickering. "What kind of puzzle solving?" "The kind that made the hegemony rethink their expansion," Drixmoth said, his eyes never leaving Rebecca. "They called her the Closer, not for negotiations, but for ending conflicts permanently." Rebecca sighed, her casual facade cracking. "Professor, this isn't appropriate for class." "It's exactly appropriate," Drixmoth countered. "We're studying human combat capabilities, and you are the most documented one in our files." Talvix, pride-wounded but curious, interjected, "One human can't change an entire species' military policy." "The hegemony had billions of soldiers," had Drixmoth corrected. "Their recruitment dropped 70% after the crash sector. Young hegemony chose civilian careers because of what happened to units that faced her." Rebecca closed her eyes briefly. "Those were extraordinary circumstances, or the first time humans showed what they're capable of when diplomacy fails," Drixmoth said. The room was silent, every student grappling with the implications. This wasn't theoretical. They were in the presence of a being who'd redefined galactic warfare. Rebecca stood, moving to the holographic display. "Since we're doing this, let's do it properly. Human warfare isn't like yours. Most species fight for tactical superiority, better weapons, positioning, technology. Humans treat war as a system problem." She manipulated the display, pulling up data on the crash sector conflict. "You focus on tactics, weapons, casualties. We focus on outcome efficiency, making fighting unnecessary." The crash sector lasted 6 weeks. The hegemony didn't just withdraw. They restructured their expansion doctrine, adopted new diplomatic protocols, and avoided conflicts with human-backed species. Quinda, the arachnid student, raised a limb. "You're talking about psychological warfare on a strategic scale." "Comprehensive systems intervention," Rebecca corrected. "We analyze supply chains, command structures, economies, psychologies, everything. We find pressure points where small actions cause cascading effects. The display showed a web of interconnected systems, highlighting critical nodes. Traditional warfare destroys capability through force. Humans convince enemies' resistance isn't worth the cost by exposing their weaknesses. Velnox, a warrior from a battle-proud culture, bristled. This sounds dishonorable. Where's the glory of combat? There's no glory, Rebecca said, her voice soft but firm. Combat is a failure of problem-solving. Every death, every resource spent on war is a waste. We fight to end wars permanently, to create conditions where fighting is irrelevant. The display shifted to post-conflict data, rebuilt infrastructure, thriving trade, scientific collaborations. After the crash sector, productivity rose 40%, trade doubled. The hegemony stopped fighting because cooperation was more profitable than conquest. Talvik spoke quietly. What about species that only respond to force? Rebecca's expression darkened. For those, we have different approaches: precision application of overwhelming force to eliminate threats with minimal collateral damage. We solve problems definitively. The room chilled. Quinda whispered, genocide, surgical problem elimination. Rebecca said, most species think in absolutes: total war or peace. Humans think in targeted solutions. Drixmoth looked at his outdated lecture notes, then at Rebecca. We need to revise our threat assessment protocols. Rebecca nodded. Wise. Every negotiation, every treaty, will now be conducted knowing the alternatives. As she gathered her things, she added, one more thing. The exchange program is reciprocal. Alien students are attending human military academies, learning our doctrine from the perspective of allies. The implications hit like a shockwave. If Rebecca was what humans revealed casually, what were they teaching trusted allies? She paused at the door. The universe is changing. Humans are part of it now. Species that adapt will thrive. Those that don't. She shrugged. Leaving the threat unspoken, Drixmoth watched her leave, then turned to his students. We need to start those curriculum revisions. But he knew it was more than curricula. Defense budgets, diplomatic protocols, alliances, all would shift in light of one truth. Humanity hadn't joined the galaxy as junior partners. They were apex predators, politely giving the galaxy time to adjust. The age of human influence had begun, not with fanfare, but with a quiet lecture where one woman redefined the galactic balance of power.